Rain hammered the entrance of his mansion. The billionaire CEO, still in his white shirt from a late-night meeting, opened the door, expecting no one. A 10-year-old girl in a soaked yellow dress looked up at him with urgent eyes. "My sister's fainted," she said, pointing behind her. Two identical girls, braids, the same yellow dresses, lay motionless on the wet street. He froze. He had never seen these children before in his life. What he didn't know was that this stormy night would unravel a secret he had buried for a decade and force him to face the three daughters he never knew existed. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. "Who are you?" James Morgan asked, staring at the small girl on his doorstep. Rain poured down around her yellow raincoat as thunder boomed across the night sky. "I'm Zoe. My sisters need help," she said, her voice surprisingly calm for a child standing alone in a storm at nearly midnight. She pointed to the driveway where two identical girls lay motionless on the wet pavement. "Oh my God!" James rushed out into the rain without grabbing a coat. The two girls appeared to be the same age as the first child, about 10 years old. They weren't moving. Panic surged through him as he checked for pulses, relief washing over him when he felt the steady beat beneath his fingers. He gathered one unconscious girl in his arms. "Zoe, right? Can you help me get your sisters inside?" "I can try to carry Layla," she said, but James shook his head. "Just open doors for me. I'll come back for her." 5 minutes later, both unconscious girls lay on couches in James's living room. Water dripped from their clothes onto his expensive leather furniture, but James didn't care. He handed Zoe a towel as he dialed his phone. "Dr. Kendrick? It's James Morgan. I have an emergency at my house. 2 unconscious children. Yes, children. Please come immediately." Zoe stood watching him, water pooling around her yellow rain boots on the marble floor. "Let's get you dry," James said, grabbing another towel. "What happened to your sisters?" "Maya and Layla got really tired walking here. Then they just fell down." Zoe's voice trembled slightly. "We've been traveling for 2 days. "Traveling from where? Where are your parents?" James asked, leading her to sit in a chair near her sisters. "Our mom died 2 weeks ago. Cancer." Zoe reached into her raincoat pocket and pulled out a damp envelope. "Before she died, Mom gave me this. She said if anything happened to her, we should find you." James took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a water-stained photograph of himself from about 10 years ago, along with his current address written on a piece of paper. "Your mother, what was her name?" he asked, though something inside him already knew the answer. "Tasha Williams." The name hit James like a physical blow. Tasha. 10 years since he'd heard that name. 10 years since she had disappeared from his life without explanation. One of the girls on the couch stirred and opened her eyes. "Zoe?" she called weakly. "I'm here, Maya." Zoe rushed to her sister's side. "We made it. We found him." James knelt beside the couch. "Hello, Maya. I'm James. You're safe now." The other girl began to wake up too, looking around in confusion at the massive living room with its high ceilings and modern art. "Where are we?" she asked. "This is James Morgan's house, Layla," Zoe explained. "The man Mom told us about." James felt like he couldn't breathe. "Girls, what exactly did your mother tell you about me?" Zoe reached into her backpack and pulled out 3 folded papers. "We have our birth certificates. They don't list a father's name. But Mom always said our father was a good man who didn't know about us." James took the documents with trembling hands. 3 birth certificates for 3 identical triplet girls, born 10 years and 3 months ago. Mother, Tasha Williams. Father, unknown. He looked at their faces, really looked at them for the first time. 3 pairs of bright blue eyes stared back at him. His eyes. They had his eyes. The doorbell rang, breaking the moment. "That must be Dr. Kendrick," James said, standing up quickly. "Let me get the door." Dr. Nathan Kendrick had been James's personal physician for 5 years. The gray-haired doctor looked surprised to find children in the billionaire's house, but asked no questions as he examined the 2 girls who had collapsed. "They're suffering from exhaustion and slight dehydration," Dr. Kendrick concluded after his examination. "Nothing serious. Some rest, fluids, and food will help, but they should be monitored tonight." He looked at James with raised eyebrows. "Are these your relatives?" "They're—" James paused, unsure what to say. "They're staying with me for now." After Dr. Kendrick left, James brought the girls water and made sandwiches, something he hadn't done himself in years. His staff had weekends off, and he was usually alone in this massive house, just the way he liked it. "You have a really big house?" Maya said between bites of her sandwich. "Do you live here all alone?" Layla asked, looking around the room. "Yes," James replied. "Just me." "That seems lonely," Zoe said quietly, studying his face. James changed the subject. "Let me show you where you can sleep tonight. Tomorrow we can figure everything out." He led them upstairs to 3 guest rooms that had never been used. The girls hesitated at being separated. "Can we stay in one room?" Zoe asked. "We always sleep together at home." "Of course," James replied, opening the door to the largest guest room with 2 queen beds. "Will this work?" The girls nodded and climbed into the beds, Maya and Layla in one, Zoe in the other. "If you need anything, my room is down the hall," James said awkwardly, not knowing the proper protocol for putting children to bed. "Thank you for helping us," Zoe said formally, as though she were much older than 10 years old. After they settled in, James retreated to his office and slumped into his chair. He opened his laptop and searched for Tasha Williams' death. The obituary appeared immediately, confirming everything Zoe had said. Tasha had died 2 weeks ago in Atlanta after a long battle with cancer. The obituary mentioned she was survived by her 3 daughters, Zoe, Maya, and Layla. James opened his bottom desk drawer and pulled out an old photo album, something he hadn't looked at in years. There she was, Tasha Williams. Beautiful, brilliant Tasha, who had worked at the coffee shop near his first tiny office in Atlanta. They had dated for 6 months while he was getting his company off the ground. Then one day she was just gone. No explanation. His calls went unanswered. Her apartment emptied. He had been heartbroken but eventually moved on, pouring himself into building Morgan Technologies into a billion-dollar company. James did the math in his head. If the girls were 10 years old, then Tasha must have been pregnant when she disappeared. But why hadn't she told him? Why keep it secret for a decade? His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, his executive assistant. Reminder, board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Presentation for West Coast Tech merger ready for your review. James typed back quickly, "Need to cancel all meetings tomorrow. Family emergency." Patricia's response was immediate. "Family emergency? You don't have family." "I do now," James whispered to himself, staring at the birth certificates on his desk. "Apparently, I have 3 daughters." He walked quietly back to the guest room and stood in the doorway watching the 3 girls sleep. 3 little strangers with his eyes and Tasha's smile. 3 children who had traveled for days to find him after losing their mother. In 12 hours, his perfectly organized life had completely unraveled. Everything had changed with the ring of a doorbell in a storm. James stood in the doorway watching the 3 girls sleep long after midnight. The steady rain continued outside, tapping against the windows of his massive Connecticut mansion. In the morning, he would need to figure out what to do with these children who had literally appeared on his doorstep, claiming to be his daughters. When the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, James had already been awake for hours, making phone calls and researching everything he could about Tasha Williams. He changed into a fresh suit, his usual morning routine unchanged despite the extraordinary circumstances. The sound of small footsteps made him turn around. Maya stood in the hallway, her glasses slightly crooked on her face. "Good morning," she said formally. Do you have any cereal? Cereal? I'm not sure, James replied, realizing he rarely ate breakfast at home. Let me check. In the kitchen, James opened cabinets that contained mostly coffee and protein bars. Maya watched him with curious eyes. You don't cook much, do you? She asked. No, I usually eat at the office. Zoe and Layla appeared in the doorway, still in yesterday's clothes, but with their hair somewhat combed. Is there breakfast? Layla asked hopefully. I'm working on it, James said, pulling out his phone. Let me call my assistant. 30 minutes later, Patricia Cooper arrived with grocery bags. She stopped short when she saw the three girls sitting awkwardly at James's formal dining table. Mr. Morgan, Patricia said, her voice carefully controlled. When you said family emergency, I assumed it was a figure of speech. Patricia, meet Zoe, Maya, and Layla, James said. They arrived last night. Patricia's eyes widened slightly, but her professional demeanor never faltered. Well then, let's get everyone some breakfast. As Patricia prepared pancakes, James pulled her aside. I need you to arrange for DNA tests, discreetly. Patricia lowered her voice. Are these children claiming to be related to you? Their mother was Tasha Williams. We dated 10 years ago in Atlanta. Recognition flashed in Patricia's eyes. The one who disappeared. James nodded. The timing fits. And they have my eyes, Patricia. I'll make the arrangements, she said, returning to the pancakes. After breakfast, the mansion transformed into chaos. Layla discovered the entertainment room and turned the volume on the television to maximum. Maya found James's home office and began examining his collection of technology prototypes. Zoe simply followed James, watching his every move with careful eyes. Do you really make computers? Maya asked, holding an early version of Morgan Technology's flagship product. My company makes the chips that go inside computers, James explained. They help computers think faster. I like computers, Maya said. Mom said you were very smart with technology. James felt a twist in his heart. What else did your mother tell you about me? Before Maya could answer, the doorbell rang. Patricia showed in a woman carrying a briefcase. Mr. Morgan, this is Diane Reynolds from Child Services, Patricia announced. Ms. Reynolds was a thin woman with kind eyes and a serious expression. I understand 3 minors arrived at your residence last night, she said, after introductions were made. That's right, James confirmed. Their mother recently passed away. Yes, I'm familiar with the Williams case, Ms. Reynolds said. The girls were briefly in foster care during their mother's treatment. When Ms. Williams passed, we couldn't locate them at the address on file. They came here, James said. They believe I'm their father. Ms. Reynolds nodded without surprise. And are you? I'm arranging tests, but yes, I believe I am. Mr. Morgan, without legal guardianship established, I cannot leave these children in your care. They would need to return to the foster system until— No, James interrupted. They can't go back into the system. I'll apply for temporary custody while we sort this out. Zoe, who had been silent until now, spoke up. We don't want to go back to different homes. We need to stay together. Ms. Reynolds looked at the girls with sympathy. I understand that, but there are procedures. I'll call my lawyers, James said firmly. We'll file whatever paperwork is necessary today. After 2 hours of phone calls and Patricia rushing documents across town, Ms. Reynolds agreed to a temporary arrangement pending an emergency custody hearing. I'll be checking in regularly, she warned before leaving. James's phone rang constantly. Marcus Washington, his COO and best friend, was particularly insistent. James, where are you? The investors from Chicago are waiting. Cancel it, Marcus. I can't make it. Cancel? These people flew in specifically to meet with you. It's an emergency. Family situation. A pause. Family? What family? It's complicated. I'll explain later. After ending the call, James turned to find all 3 girls staring at him. We need to get you some clothes and things, he said, realizing they had nothing but what they wore. "We're going shopping." The trip to the local mall was unlike anything James had experienced. He typically ordered his clothes online or had his personal shopper select them. Now he found himself in children's departments, surrounded by small clothes in bright colors. "Do we have a budget?" Zoe asked practically. James blinked at her. "No. Get whatever you need." 2 hours and thousands of dollars later, they returned home with bags of clothes, shoes, toiletries, and books. Maya had convinced James they needed school supplies, while Layla insisted on sports equipment. Zoe selected only the basics, watching carefully as James handed over his credit card for each purchase. That evening, after Patricia had organized the girls' new belongings in their room, James attempted to establish some order. "We should talk about house rules," he said as they ate pizza around the dining table. "Like what?" Layla asked, mouth full of cheese. "Like bedtime," James said, realizing he had no idea what was appropriate. "And homework, when you start school." "Are you going to send us back?" Layla asked suddenly. The question hung in the air. James looked at the three faces watching him. Maya curious, Layla worried, Zoe guarded. "Back where?" he asked. "To foster care," Layla clarified, "if we're too much trouble." James felt something crack inside him. He remembered his own childhood in foster homes, the constant fear of being sent away. "No," he said firmly, "you're not going back. We're going to figure this out together." Later that night, after the girls had gone to bed, James returned to his office. An email notification appeared on his screen. The DNA testing lab had sent preliminary results. His finger hovered over the mouse, hesitating. A piece of paper on his desk caught his eye. It was a drawing Zoe must have left there, a simple sketch of 4 stick figures holding hands. The largest figure was labeled Dad, while the 3 smaller ones had their names, Zoe, Maya, Layla. James stared at the drawing for a long time, then looked at the email notification again. Whatever the science said, he already knew the truth. These girls had changed his life in less than 24 hours. His phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. "Emergency custody hearing scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m. Your presence required." James nodded to himself. 5 days to prove he could be a father to 3 children he'd just met. 5 days to completely reimagine the life he'd built over the past decade. He clicked on the email and began to read the results. James stared at the computer screen, the DNA test results confirming what he already knew in his heart. The probability of paternity, 99.9%. He was the father of triplets he had never known existed. The next morning, James called Patricia from his home office. "The test results are positive," he said quietly, aware that the girls might overhear. "I need to enroll them in school right away." "I've researched options," Patricia replied. "Greenwich Academy has an excellent reputation. I can arrange a meeting with the admissions director today." 3 hours later, James sat in a plush office across from Dr. Eleanor Bennett, the admissions director at Greenwich Academy. Patricia had brought stacks of forms that James was quickly signing. "This is quite unusual, Mr. Morgan," Dr. Bennett said. "Mid-semester admissions for 3 students with no prior records from your household." "Their mother recently passed away," James explained. "They've come to live with me permanently." "I see." Dr. Bennett's expression softened slightly. "We'll need their previous school records from Atlanta." "Patricia is handling that," James said, looking to his assistant, who nodded confidently. "We can have the girls start on Monday," Dr. Bennett said. "That gives you 4 days to prepare them." Back at the mansion, James found Maya in his home office, examining his awards and technology patents on the wall. "Did we pass the test?" she asked when she saw him. James paused, realizing she meant the DNA test. "Yes. The test confirms I'm your father, But Maya nodded as if this was simply scientific confirmation of known facts. Good. Zoe was worried they might send us away if it was negative. That wouldn't have happened, James said firmly. But yes, the test is positive, and you'll be starting school on Monday. What kind of school? Maya pushed her glasses up her nose. It's called Greenwich Academy. It's one of the best schools in Connecticut. Maya's eyes widened. Do they have a good science program? I believe they do. Why don't we find your sisters and talk about it? The next 4 days passed in a blur of preparation. Patricia helped purchase uniforms, backpacks, and supplies. James tried to learn the girls' routines and preferences. He discovered Maya needed extra time in the morning to read, Layla was constantly misplacing her things, and Zoe silently managed her sisters while watching James with cautious eyes. On Monday morning, James experienced his first true test of fatherhood, getting 3 10-year-old girls ready for school. Maya, have you seen my blue hair ties? Layla called, running between rooms in her uniform. No, I'm trying to finish this chapter, Maya replied, nose buried in a science book. We need to leave in 15 minutes, James announced, checking his watch. Zoe appeared, already dressed and organized. Layla, your hair ties are in the bathroom. Maya, you need to get dressed now or you won't have time for breakfast. James watched in amazement as Zoe efficiently directed her sisters. When they finally piled into his car, they were only 7 minutes behind schedule. Do you know how to make lunches? Zoe asked as they drove. James realized he had completely forgotten about lunch. We can buy lunch at school today. Tomorrow I'll figure something out. At Greenwich Academy, other parents stared as the famous tech CEO escorted 3 identical girls into the building. The girls were assigned to the same 5th grade classroom, but with separate seats to encourage independence. I'll pick you up at 3 o'clock, James told them. Have a good first day. As he walked back to his car, his phone buzzed with messages from Marcus. Board meeting in 30 minutes. West Coast Tech representatives requesting timeline update. For the first time in his career, James wasn't fully focused during the board meeting. He checked his phone constantly, wondering how the girls were doing at school. James, are you even listening? Marcus asked after James missed a direct question. I'm sorry, what was that? Marcus frowned. The merger timeline. West Coast Tech needs confirmation that you'll personally oversee the integration process. Of course, James nodded. I'll be fully involved. Board member Richard Stanton cleared his throat. James, some of us have concerns about your recent distraction. Distraction? 3 children appearing in your life overnight, Richard clarified. The company is at a critical juncture with this merger. My personal life won't affect the merger, James stated firmly. The meeting continued, but at 2:30 James stood up abruptly. We'll continue this tomorrow. I have to pick up my daughters from school. The board members exchanged glances as James left. Marcus followed him to the elevator. James, I'm happy for you finding your kids. I really am. But the West Coast Tech merger is worth billions. If investors sense any instability in leadership, what are you suggesting, Marcus? That I ignore my children? No, but maybe consider boarding school, or hire a nanny to handle pickups and… They just lost their mother, James interrupted. They need stability, not another caretaker. At Greenwich Academy, James waited in line with other parents. When the girls emerged, they had different reactions to their first day. Maya was excited about the science lab. Layla had already made friends on the playground, but Zoe was quieter than usual. Everything okay? James asked her on the drive home. The other kids asked a lot of questions, Zoe said, about why we look the same but have different interests. About our mom. About you. What did you tell them? That our mom died and our dad didn't know about us until now. Zoe looked out the window. Is that okay? That's perfectly fine, James assured her. It's the truth. Over the next 2 weeks, James's perfectly ordered home transformed. Maya converted a corner of his home office into a science area with experiments that often made strange smells. Layla convinced him to install a basketball hoop in the driveway where she practiced for hours. Zoe carefully placed framed photos of their mother throughout the house, silent reminders of the woman who had connected them all. At Morgan Technologies, James began a new routine of leaving the office by 2:30 for school pickup. His board members grew increasingly concerned, especially when he missed a video call with Japanese investors because Layla had a basketball tryout. "This merger won't happen if you're not fully committed," Marcus warned him after another missed meeting. "I am committed," James insisted. "I'm just adjusting my schedule." One evening, James found Layla crying in her room. Her basketball team had lost their first game and she was devastated. "Hey, what's going on?" he asked, awkwardly sitting on the edge of her bed. "We lost because I missed the last shot," she sobbed. "Everyone misses shots sometimes." "Mom always knew what to say when I was upset," Layla sniffled. "She would read to us when we felt bad." Would you like me to read something?" James offered hesitantly. Soon all three girls were in the large bed, listening as James read from a book Maya had selected. His phone buzzed repeatedly with work messages, but for once, he ignored them completely. Later that night, while working on merger documents, James accidentally knocked over a stack of books in the girls' room. As he picked them up, a small purple notebook fell open. It was Zoe's journal. He knew he shouldn't read it, but a sentence caught his eye. "I'm scared he'll get tired of us like the other foster families did when Mom was sick. They all said we were too much work." James carefully replaced the journal, his heart heavy. He didn't notice the blinking message light on his phone until morning. 3 missed calls from a Detroit number he didn't recognize. When he finally returned the call before breakfast, a woman's angry voice answered. "This is Andrea Williams. I want to know why nobody told me my sister's children are living with a stranger." "A stranger?" James repeated, gripping his phone tightly. "I'm their father." "Their father who never bothered to show up for 10 years? Andrea's voice was sharp with anger. "I'm coming to get my nieces." "Miss Williams, please. The girls have been through enough already. Let's discuss this calmly. I'll be there tomorrow. We can discuss it then." The line went dead. James stood frozen, staring at his phone. The sound of footsteps made him turn around. The girls were coming down for breakfast, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. 2 days later, a taxi pulled up to James's mansion. A woman with the same warm brown skin as the girls stepped out, her face set in determination. Patricia showed her into the living room where James waited. "Andrea Williams," she introduced herself coldly. "Where are my nieces?" "They're upstairs doing homework," James said. "Look, Ms. Williams, I understand you're upset." "Upset?" Andrea cut him off. "My sister dies and suddenly you appear claiming father's rights after 10 years of absence? Where were you when Tasha was working 3 jobs to support them? Where were you during her cancer treatments?" "I didn't know," James said quietly. "Tasha never told me she was pregnant." "A convenient excuse," Andrea scoffed. "A rich man like you couldn't be bothered with 3 babies, could you? She told me how ambitious you were, how focused on your company. That's not true. If I had known, you would have what? Played weekend dad while building your empire? Those girls needed a full-time father, not someone who would fit them into his schedule when convenient." James felt his temper rising. "You don't know me or what I would have done. Tasha made that decision for all of us when she disappeared without a word. After everything those girls have been through, you think you can just step in and play daddy now?" Andrea's voice rose. "I was there for every birthday, every school play, every hospital visit when they had the flu. Where were you?" Neither of them noticed the small figure on the staircase until Zoe spoke. "You knew about us?" Her voice was small but clear. "All this time?" James turned to see all 3 girls standing on the stairs. Their faces showed they had heard everything. "Zoe, no, that's not— You said you didn't know about us," Maya said, her eyes filling with tears. "I didn't," James insisted. Then why did Aunt Andrea say you chose your company instead of us? Layla demanded. Andrea moved quickly to the stairs, embracing the girls. I'm here now. I'm taking you home with me. They are home, James said firmly. Girls, go pack your things, Andrea instructed. No one is packing anything, James said. Ms. Williams, we need to talk privately. Aunt Andrea? Zoe's voice was hesitant. Mom wanted us to find him. She gave me his address before she died. Something flickered in Andrea's expression. Your mother was very sick at the end, Zoe. She wasn't thinking clearly. She was thinking clearly enough to make sure they found me, James countered. The standoff continued until Patricia intervened, taking the girls to the kitchen for lunch while the adults sorted things out. But the damage was done. The girls' fragile trust in James had been shaken. After hours of tense discussion, Andrea agreed to stay in a hotel nearby while they worked through the legal situation, but as she left, she warned James, "This isn't over. Those girls belong with family." "I am their family," James replied. That night, Zoe refused to speak to James at dinner. When he tried to help with homework, she simply took her books and walked away. The wall between them grew higher with each silent hour. The next morning, James's phone exploded with notifications. A local news outlet had published a story. Tech billionaire James Morgan discovers secret triplets after mother's death. How did they find out? James demanded when Patricia arrived. Someone at the school must have talked, she said grimly. There are photographers outside the gate. By afternoon, the story had spread to national news. Reporters camped outside the mansion gates and at Greenwich Academy. James hired security guards to ensure the girls' safety, but he couldn't protect them from the whispers and stares at school. 3 days later, the principal called. Layla had punched a boy who had teased Maya about being bought by a billionaire. James left a board meeting to pick them up. He said, "We were only living with you because you paid money for us," Layla explained, her knuckles bruised. "Like we're things you bought." "That's not true," James said gently. "Then why is everyone saying it?" Maya asked, her voice small. Back at Morgan Technologies, the board called an emergency meeting about the public relations crisis. James sat through an hour of concerned questions about the effect on company stock and investor confidence. This personal drama is affecting shareholder value, Richard Stanton pointed out. The timing couldn't be worse with the West Coast tech merger on the line. "My children are not personal drama," James said coldly. After the meeting, Marcus followed James to his office. "James, be reasonable. You're trying to run a major company while suddenly parenting 3 traumatized kids. Maybe boarding school would—" "Boarding school?" James turned on his friend. "They just lost their mother." "I'm trying to help you save everything you've built," Marcus shouted back. "This merger will fall apart if investors think you're distracted." "Then let it fall apart," James said quietly. "You don't mean that. This company is your life's work." James stared out the window. "I'm learning there are more important things." At home, James found Maya working on a science project in his office. Unlike her sisters, she hadn't withdrawn from him completely. "What are you building?" he asked. "A model of the solar system that shows actual planetary rotation," she explained, carefully painting a tiny Mars. "It's for the science fair next week." "Need any help?" Maya hesitated, then nodded. "The motor keeps stopping when Jupiter rotates." For the next 2 hours, they worked together, forgetting about angry ants and newspaper stories. When they finally got Jupiter spinning correctly, Maya smiled for the first time in days. "Mom said you were good at fixing things," she said quietly. The peace was short-lived. The next day, Patricia brought in a legal notice. Andrea Williams had filed for custody of the girls, hiring high-profile family attorney Eliza Montgomery. "She's claiming you're an unfit parent because of your work schedule," Patricia explained, "and that the girls are being harmed by the media attention." The custody battle quickly became public news. Social media divided into those supporting James, #TeamJamesDad, and those supporting Andrea, #FamilyNotFortune. Reporters followed the girls everywhere, shouting questions about who they wanted to live with. The pressure began to affect Maya most visibly. One morning, James found her hyperventilating in her bedroom, unable to go to school. "I can't breathe," she gasped. "Everyone keeps watching us. Everyone keeps talking about us." The school nurse confirmed it was an anxiety attack. When similar episodes happened twice more that week, James made a decision. That evening, he gathered the girls in the living room. "We're going away for a while." "Away where?" Layla asked suspiciously. "I have a house by a lake in northern Connecticut. No neighbors for miles, no reporters, just trees and water." "What about school?" Maya asked. "You can do online classes temporarily. I'll work remotely." "What about your company?" Zoe spoke directly to him for the first time in days. "The company can manage without me being physically there." The next morning, they loaded the car before dawn and slipped past the reporters still sleeping in their vans. 3 hours later, they arrived at a wooden cabin nestled among pine trees on the shore of a small lake. It wasn't fancy like James's mansion. The furniture was old but comfortable. The kitchen was small but functional. And most importantly, there were no cameras, no reporters, and no curious stares. That afternoon, James watched from the porch as the girls explored the shoreline. Maya collected rocks, Layla threw stones across the water, and Zoe sat quietly looking at the mountains. For the first time since Andrea's arrival, they looked like children instead of prisoners under siege. James's phone rang. It was his lawyer. "The judge wants to see everyone in chambers," the lawyer said. "The preliminary custody hearing has been moved up. We need to be in court on Friday." James watched the girls by the lake, momentarily free from the chaos that had engulfed their lives. They had 3 days of peace before they would have to face the next battle. The drive back to Greenwich from the lake house was silent. James had spent their final peaceful morning helping the girls pack while taking work calls. The custody hearing loomed ahead, casting a shadow over the brief calm they had found by the water. "What will happen at court?" Maya asked as they passed through the gates of the mansion, where reporters immediately began taking pictures. "The judge will talk to all of us," James explained. "Then she'll decide what's best for you three." "Best how?" Layla questioned. "Like who has the bigger house?" "No," James shook his head. "It's about who can take better care of you." Zoe, who had barely spoken to James since learning about Andrea's accusations, looked up. "Aunt Andrea took care of us sometimes when Mom was sick." "I know," James said quietly. "She loves you very much." Inside the house, Patricia waited with James's legal team. While the girls went upstairs to unpack, the adults gathered in the study. "The strategy is simple," said Howard Brennan, James's longtime attorney. "We emphasize your financial resources, the quality of their education at Greenwich Academy, the stability you can provide." "Those aren't the most important things," Patricia interrupted. "The judge will want to see an emotional connection. These girls need a father, not just financial security." "Patricia's right," James agreed. "I need to show the judge I'm committed to them as a father, not just a provider." The next morning, Dr. Elaine Bennett arrived. The court had appointed her as a child psychologist to evaluate the family situation. "I'll need to observe your interactions and speak with each child privately," she explained, setting up recording equipment in the living room. For the next 3 hours, Dr. Bennett watched James attempt to help the girls with homework, prepare lunch, and discuss their school activities. Maya showed him her science project, excitedly explaining her solar system model. Layla demonstrated basketball moves in the driveway, trying to teach James proper shooting form. Zoe remained polite but distant, answering questions with minimal words. After the individual sessions, Dr. Bennett pulled James aside. "Maya clearly trusts you," she noted. "Layla is warming up but testing boundaries. Zoe is the most guarded. She thinks I abandoned them," James said. "That I knew about them and chose my company instead." Did you? No. I had no idea they existed until they showed up on my doorstep. Dr. Bennett nodded thoughtfully. Children need consistency, Mr. Morgan. Your work demands are significant. How do you plan to balance both? Before James could answer, his phone rang. It was Marcus with an emergency. The West Coast tech representatives are threatening to walk, Marcus said urgently. Their CEO says if you can't meet with them today, they'll consider other partners. I can't today, James insisted. The custody evaluation is happening right now. James, this merger has been in the works for 2 years. It's worth billions. If it falls apart, I'll call them myself, James conceded. Give me 20 minutes. When James returned to Dr. Bennett, she was packing up her equipment. I apologize for the interruption, he said. Mr. Morgan, interruptions are part of parenting, she replied evenly. The question is, what takes priority? The next day brought more challenges. Layla had her first basketball game with her new school team. She had been practicing for weeks. You're coming, right? She asked at breakfast. It starts at 4 o'clock. I'll be there, James promised. But at 3:30, disaster struck at Morgan Technologies. The server containing all the merger documents crashed and the backup system failed. The legal team needed James's authorization codes to access emergency archives. I can't miss this game, James told Marcus over the phone. There must be another solution. There isn't, Marcus insisted. Without those codes, we lose everything. The lawyers are waiting. James arrived at the school gym 20 minutes after the game ended. Layla sat alone on the bleachers, still in her uniform. I'm so sorry, he said, sitting beside her. There was an emergency at work. We lost, Layla said flatly. I scored 10 points, though. That's great. I wish I'd seen it. Mom never missed my games, Layla said quietly. Even when she was sick, she came in a wheelchair. The drive home was silent. That night, James couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Layla's words, about Tasha's dedication despite her illness. Around midnight, he went to check on the girls and found Maya awake, reading with a flashlight. Can't sleep? He asked from the doorway. She shook her head. I was reading Mom's old book. It still smells like her perfume. James sat on the edge of her bed. You know, I just realized something. We've never really talked about your mom, about how you're feeling since she died. Maya's eyes filled with tears. We're not supposed to cry. Zoe said we have to be strong. Who told Zoe that? Mom did. She said Zoe had to be strong for us when she was gone. The next morning, James made a decision. He found the girls at breakfast. We're going on a trip, he announced. To Atlanta. Why? Zoe asked suspiciously. To visit your mother's grave. The girls fell silent. Finally, Maya spoke. We didn't go to the funeral. The Foster family said it would be too hard for us. I think it's important, James said, to say goodbye properly. Patricia arranged everything. By that afternoon, they were on James's private jet to Atlanta. The girls were quiet during the flight, each lost in their own thoughts. The cemetery was peaceful with trees and flowers surrounding the graves. Tasha's headstone was simple granite with her name, dates, and the words, Beloved Mother. The girls stood frozen, staring at the grave. Then Layla began to cry, big heaving sobs that shook her small body. Maya joined next, tears streaming silently down her face. Zoe held out longest, but when James gently placed his hand on her shoulder, she broke down completely. For nearly an hour they cried together by Tasha's grave. James gave them space but stayed close, offering tissues and comfort without words. She was so brave, Zoe finally said. She never complained even when she was in pain. She sounds amazing, James said softly. Would you like to hear about the Tasha I knew? The girls nodded and James began to share stories of their mother from 10 years ago. How she made the best coffee in Atlanta. How she could name every constellation in the night sky. How she helped James believe in himself when his company was just a struggling startup. She was the smartest person in any room, James said. And she never let anyone tell her something was impossible. That sounds like Mom, Maya said, smiling through tears. On the flight home, Zoe sat next to James for the first time since Andrea had arrived. "Why do you think she never told you about us?" she asked suddenly. James took a deep breath. "I honestly don't know, Zoe. I wish every day that she had. I missed 10 years with you three that I can never get back." Zoe studied his face carefully. "I believe you didn't know about us," she said finally, "but I'm still mad about it." "That's fair," James nodded. "I'm mad about it too." When they landed in Connecticut, Patricia was waiting with a serious expression. She showed James her tablet in the car while the girls dozed in the back seat. "Andrea gave an interview on national television this morning," she explained, playing the video. On screen, Andrea spoke tearfully to a sympathetic interviewer. "Tasha told me James knew she was pregnant. She reached out to him when she found out, but he was focused on his company. He made it clear that he wasn't ready for fatherhood." James felt the blood drain from his face. That's a complete lie. "The girls' school called," Patricia continued. "Some students saw the interview online and were asking questions. I thought you should know before they hear about it from someone else." At home, James found the girls in Maya's room, huddled around a laptop. The interview was playing on the screen. "Is it true?" Maya asked when they saw him in the doorway. "Did you know about us?" "No," James said firmly. "I never knew. Your aunt is wrong." "How can we believe you?" Layla demanded. "Adults always lie to kids." Before James could respond, his phone rang. It was his executive assistant from Morgan Technologies. "Mr. Morgan, the Tokyo meeting has been confirmed for next Wednesday. The board insists you attend in person. They're calling it non-negotiable." James looked at his calendar on the wall. Wednesday was the girls' school talent show, the same talent show they had been practicing for every night since returning from the lake house. The talent show Layla had specifically asked him 3 times if he would attend. "I'll call you back," James said, ending the call. He stared at the calendar with both events circled in red. The Tokyo meeting would save the merger his company desperately needed. The talent show would show his daughters they could count on him. For the first time in his life, James Morgan didn't know what to do. James stared at the calendar on the wall as the girls watched him, waiting for his response about Andrea's television claims. The 2 red circles glared back at him. Tokyo meeting on one side, talent show on the other. Same day, same time. "I need to make a phone call," James said, stepping out of Maya's room. In his office, James dialed Marcus's number. "I've decided," James said when Marcus answered. "I'm not going to Tokyo." "You're what?" Marcus's voice rose. "James, this is the West Coast Tech merger, the biggest deal of our company's history. I know what it is. I want you to go instead." "Me? These people expect you. The founder, the CEO. You're the best person for this besides me. You know every detail of this merger." "The board will revolt," Marcus warned. "Let them," James replied. "Some things are more important." After hanging up, James called Patricia. "Cancel my Tokyo trip," he instructed, "and call the school. I need 3 front-row tickets to the talent show on Wednesday." The next morning, an emergency board meeting was called. James sat at the head of the conference table as 8 angry faces stared back at him. "This is completely unacceptable," Richard Stanton said, "sending Marcus to handle the most critical negotiation of the year? Marcus is fully capable." "That's not the point," Jennifer Hayes interrupted. "The Japanese executives expect you. This sends a message that we don't value the partnership." "I made a commitment to my daughters," James explained. "Their school talent show is Wednesday. I promised I'd be there." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "A school talent show? Over a multi-billion-dollar merger?" "Yes," James said simply. "This is grounds for removal as CEO," Richard threatened. "We can call for a vote of no confidence." "You're welcome to try," James replied calmly. "But I own 45% of this company, and I'm not missing another important moment in my daughter's lives." On Wednesday afternoon, James sat in the front row of the Greenwich Academy auditorium. Parents around him whispered and pointed, clearly surprised to see the famous CEO at a school function. The talent show began with piano recitals and dance performances. Then Maya took the stage wearing a white lab coat and safety goggles. "For my talent, I will demonstrate 3 science experiments about chemical reactions," she announced confidently. James watched with genuine amazement as Maya created colorful foam eruptions, a rainbow of test tubes, and a small controlled flame that burned blue instead of orange. The audience applauded and Maya beamed when she spotted James in the front row. Next came Layla's gymnastics routine. She tumbled across the stage with fearless energy, finishing with a perfect cartwheel into a split. When she stood up, her eyes found James and registered surprise that quickly turned to happiness. Several acts later, Zoe walked onto the stage alone. She stood nervously in front of the microphone. "I'm going to sing a song that was my mom's favorite," she said quietly. "She used to sing it to us at bedtime." Her clear voice filled the auditorium as she sang, "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." The simple melody carried all the emotion that Zoe usually kept hidden. By the final notes, many audience members were wiping away tears, including James. After the show, James waited in the lobby with flowers for each girl. When they emerged from backstage, their faces lit up seeing him there. "You came!" Layla exclaimed, running to hug him. "Of course I did," James said. "I wouldn't have missed it." "But what about your big meeting in Tokyo?" Maya asked. "Marcus is handling it. I wanted to be here for you." Zoe stepped forward and accepted her flowers. "Thank you," she said softly, and for the first time in weeks, she initiated a hug. The moment was interrupted by James's phone ringing. It was his lawyer. "The judge has ordered a full investigation of both households," he explained. "Social workers will be interviewing everyone in the girls' lives, teachers, neighbors, your staff." "What about my background?" James asked, turning away from the girls. "They'll dig into everything, including your foster care records." "Keep the girls out of this as much as possible," James instructed. But keeping the girls out proved impossible. The next day, social worker Teresa Daniels arrived to interview each child separately. James paced outside the study while Teresa spoke with Zoe first. "What is she asking them?" James asked Patricia. "Standard questions," Patricia assured him, "about their daily routines, how they're adjusting, if they feel safe." "Will she ask who they want to live with?" Patricia nodded grimly. "Probably." After all 3 interviews were complete, Teresa spoke with James. "The girls are intelligent and articulate," she noted. "They've clearly bonded with you despite the short time you've been together." "But," James prompted, sensing hesitation, "but they're also conflicted about their aunt. She's been present throughout their lives. This is a difficult position for children their age." That night, James couldn't sleep. Around midnight, he checked on the girls and found an empty bed in their room. Panicked, he searched the house until he found all 3 girls asleep in the media room. They had pushed couch cushions together on the floor to make one large bed, curled up together like they used to do at their mother's house. James covered them with blankets, his heart aching. They were seeking comfort from each other, just as they must have done during Tasha's illness. The next morning, Patricia arrived with a weathered notebook. "I found this while organizing the girls' belongings," she said, handing it to James. "It's Tasha's journal. I wouldn't normally invade her privacy, but I read a few entries that you should see." James hesitated before opening it. Inside was Tasha's familiar handwriting. He turned to the page Patricia had marked with a sticky note. The entry was dated 10 years and 6 months ago. "Found out today I'm pregnant. Not just pregnant, carrying triplets. 3 babies at once. When I told the doctor my boyfriend just invested his life savings in a startup company, She looked at me with such pity. Called James's office today but couldn't bring myself to leave a message. He's been working 18-hour days. This company is his dream, his future. How can I tell him he's about to become father to 3 children when he's just betting everything on his business? I need time to think. James turned the page with trembling hands. The next entry was from 2 weeks later. Made the hardest decision of my life today. I'm going to Atlanta. My cousin has a place where I can stay until the babies are born. James doesn't need the burden of 3 children when he's trying to launch his company. Maybe in a year or 2, when the business is stable, I can tell him he deserves his shot at success without instant fatherhood derailing everything. I love him enough to give him that chance. James closed the journal, tears streaming down his face. All these years he'd wondered why Tasha left without explanation. Now he knew. She had been trying to protect his dreams, his future. Patricia touched his shoulder gently. She was trying to do the right thing, James. She shouldn't have had to make that choice, he whispered. We could have figured it out together. From what I gather reading more entries, Patricia said, she always planned to tell you once the company was established. She kept news clippings of your success. She was proud of you. Then she got sick. That evening, James sat with the girls for dinner. Looking at their faces, he saw pieces of himself and Tasha combined in 3 perfect creations. I found your mother's journal today, he said carefully. The girls froze. Zoe's fork stopped midway to her mouth. Patricia discovered it while organizing some of your things, he continued. I read the part where your mother found out she was pregnant with you 3. What did it say? Maya asked quietly. It said she loved me, and she loved you 3 from the moment she knew about you. She made a difficult choice because she thought it was best for everyone. Are you mad at her? Layla asked. No, James shook his head. I'm sad about the time I missed with you. But I understand why she did what she did. Zoe studied his face. Will you let us read it? When you're a bit older, James promised. Some parts might be hard to understand right now. That night, James gently placed the journal in his office safe, vowing to share it with the girls when they were ready. His phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer. Judge wants to see everyone in chambers tomorrow at 10 a.m. before making preliminary ruling. Be prepared. James stared at the message, knowing tomorrow would determine all their futures. James barely slept that night. By 6 in the morning, he was already dressed in his best suit, reviewing notes with his lawyer in the kitchen while Patricia made breakfast for the girls. The private meeting with Judge Simmons is unusual but could work in our favor, Howard Brennan explained. It means she wants to hear directly from the children in a less intimidating setting than open court. What should I say? James asked. Just be honest about your commitment to the girls. The judge will see through anything rehearsed. Upstairs, Patricia helped the girls choose appropriate outfits, simple dresses that were formal enough for court, but still allowed them to look like children, not miniature adults. I'm scared, Maya admitted as Patricia braided her hair. That's normal, Patricia assured her. Just answer the judge's questions honestly. What if she sends us away from James? Layla asked. Patricia's hands paused briefly. The judge wants what's best for you 3. She'll listen to everyone before deciding. At 9:30 that morning, their small convoy arrived at the courthouse. Photographers and reporters lined the entrance, held back by police barriers. Some protesters stood nearby with signs, "Children need family, not fortune," and "Let kids choose their home." Inside, they were escorted to Judge Eleanor Simmons' private chambers. It was a warm room with bookshelves and family photos, less intimidating than a courtroom. Andrea was already seated with her lawyer, Eliza Montgomery. The sisters exchanged tight smiles but didn't speak. Judge Simmons was a black woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind reading glasses. She greeted everyone, then focused on the girls. "I'd like to speak with Zoe, Maya, and Layla alone first," she said. "Everyone else can wait outside." James squeezed each girl's shoulder reassuringly before leaving with the adults. In the hallway, he and Andrea stood on opposite sides, avoiding eye contact. Inside the chamber, Judge Simmons moved from behind her desk to sit with the girls in a small seating area. "I know this situation is difficult," she began gently. "I want to hear from each of you about living with your father. Maya, would you like to start?" Maya pushed her glasses up nervously. "James helps me with my science projects. He bought me a real microscope and doesn't get mad when my experiments make the house smell funny. He reads books about science so we can talk about my interests." Judge Simmons nodded. "Layla, how about you?" "He comes to my basketball practices now," Layla said. "He missed one game because of work, but he apologized and hasn't missed anything since. He's learning to play so we can practice together." "And he takes us seriously," Maya added. "He doesn't treat us like babies." Judge Simmons turned to Zoe, who had remained silent. "Zoe, how do you feel about living with your father?" Zoe looked down at her hands. "I was mad at him at first. I thought he knew about us and didn't want us. And now?" "I found Mom's journal," Zoe said quietly. "She wrote that she wanted us to meet him someday. Her last words to me were, 'Find your father. He's a good man.' She believed in him even when he didn't know about us." Judge Simmons studied Zoe's face. "Do you believe in him now?" Zoe nodded slowly. "He chose us over his company. Mom would have liked that." After speaking with the girls, Judge Simmons called the adults back in. She questioned James about his plans for balancing work and parenting, then asked Andrea about her relationship with the girls throughout their lives. "I'll consider everything I've heard today," Judge Simmons concluded. "We'll reconvene in open court tomorrow morning for my preliminary ruling." As they prepared to leave, Judge Simmons added, "Mr. Morgan, Ms. Williams, these girls have been through enough trauma already. Whatever happens, they need both of you in their lives." Outside the courthouse, the crowd had grown larger. News vans lined the street and reporters shouted questions as they exited the building. "Mr. Morgan, are you trying to buy these children with your wealth? Miss Williams, do you believe your sister would want her daughters with their biological father?" James kept the girls close as security guards cleared a path to their car. Suddenly, a photographer lunged forward, pushing past the barriers to get a better shot. In the chaos, he knocked Maya to the ground. "Maya!" James shouted, immediately dropping to shield her. Two other photographers rushed forward, and in the scramble, someone stepped on James's hand. He winced in pain but continued covering Maya while reaching for Zoe and Layla with his other arm. "Back up! Now!" the security team shouted, pushing the photographers away. James helped Maya to her feet. "Are you okay?" She nodded, shaken but unhurt. Blood dripped from James's hand where a photographer's heavy boot had crushed it against the pavement. "Dad, you're bleeding," Layla said, using the word "dad" for the first time. The entire incident was captured on video by multiple news cameras. By evening, the footage was playing on every major network, showing James protecting the girls with his body, getting injured in the process. Back at the mansion, a doctor bandaged James's hand while Patricia monitored the news coverage. "Public opinion is shifting," she reported. "People are seeing you as a father, not just a billionaire trying to claim children." Later that night, James took the girls into his home office. From his desk drawer, he removed a folder. "I want to show you something," he said, opening the folder to reveal faded papers. "This was my business plan from 10 years ago. The original blueprint for Morgan Technologies." The girls gathered around, looking at the worn pages covered in handwritten notes. "Look at the margins," James said, pointing to writing they recognized immediately. "That's Mom's handwriting," Maya whispered. James nodded. "Your mother was the first person who believed my ideas could work. She helped me develop this plan. See these notes? Her suggestions are what made everything possible." The girls traced their fingers over their mother's familiar script. "She was part of Morgan Technologies from the beginning," James explained. "Without her input, the company might never have succeeded." "She never told us that," Zoe said, surprised. "I think she wanted to let me have the spotlight," James replied. "That was how she loved people, by helping them shine." While the girls were getting ready for bed, James's phone rang. It was Marcus calling from Tokyo. "The merger is done," Marcus announced. "West Coast Tech signed the final papers an hour ago." "You did it," James said, genuinely surprised. "Even without me there." "Turns out I learned a few things watching you all these years," Marcus laughed. "Though I nearly had a heart attack when their CEO asked why you weren't present." "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That you were fighting for your daughters." Strangely enough, he respected that. He has 4 kids himself. After hanging up, James found Andrea waiting in the living room. Patricia had let her in. "I saw what happened at the courthouse," Andrea said. "How you protected them." James nodded, his bandaged hand throbbing. "Tasha would have done the same," Andrea continued. "She was fierce when it came to those girls." "I'm beginning to understand that," James said. Andrea sighed deeply. "I've been so angry, James. At you, at the situation, at Tasha for dying. Those girls are all I have left of my sister." "They need you in their lives," James said quietly. "No matter what the judge decides. And they need their father," Andrea acknowledged reluctantly. "I see that now." They talked for nearly an hour, finding common ground in their love for the girls and their memories of Tasha. By the time Andrea left, they had reached an understanding. Regardless of the court's decision, the girls would maintain their connection with both sides of their family. The next morning, James helped the girls prepare for court. His legal team had presented detailed plans for the girls' future, including education funds and a new house in a family-friendly neighborhood close to good schools. "Will we have to talk in front of everyone?" Maya asked nervously as they dressed. "Only if you want to," James assured her. "The judge already heard from you privately." "I want to say something," Zoe announced, "about Mom's wishes." James knelt before her. "You can practice with me if you'd like." For the next hour, each girl practiced what they might say if asked to speak. James listened patiently, offering gentle suggestions but mostly letting them express their own thoughts. As they prepared to leave for court, Zoe took James's bandaged hand carefully. "No matter what the judge says today, you're our dad now," she said quietly. The simple statement left James speechless. After all the legal battles, media frenzy, and family conflicts, Zoe had cut through to the heart of the matter. These 3 girls had become his world, and he was determined to be the father they deserved. "Let's go," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Together." The courthouse buzzed with activity as James and the girls arrived. News vans lined the street and reporters called out questions as they walked up the steps. Inside, the courtroom was packed with journalists, curious onlookers, and even some of James's employees who had come to show support. Howard Brennan, James's attorney, guided them to their table at the front. Andrea and her lawyer, Eliza Montgomery, sat at the opposite table. The sisters exchanged brief nods. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Eleanor Simmons," the bailiff announced. Judge Simmons entered and took her seat. "Before I hear final arguments, I want to remind everyone that this courtroom is not a media circus. We are here to determine what is best for 3 young girls who have already experienced significant trauma." Eliza Montgomery spoke first, her voice carrying throughout the courtroom. "Your Honor, we acknowledge Mr. Morgan's biological connection to these children. However, biology alone does not make a parent. For 10 years, these girls have known stability and love through their mother and extended family, including my client, their aunt, Andrea Williams." She walked closer to the judge's bench. "Mr. Morgan runs a multi-billion-dollar technology company that demands his constant attention. Just last week, he missed his daughter's basketball game due to work. His lifestyle is unpredictable, demanding, and ultimately unsuitable for raising 3 grieving children. Howard Brennan rose next. Your Honor, James Morgan has demonstrated his commitment to his daughters from the moment they arrived on his doorstep. He has restructured his entire life around their needs, arranging his work schedule around school events, helping with homework, and creating a stable, loving home. He gestured toward James. Mr. Morgan made the difficult choice to prioritize his daughters over the biggest business deal of his career, choosing to attend their school talent show instead of a critical meeting in Tokyo. That decision speaks volumes about his priorities moving forward. Judge Simmons listened intently, then asked, "Would the girls like to address the court?" To everyone's surprise, all 3 girls stood together. They walked to the front, holding hands in a chain, with Zoe in the middle. "We prepared what we wanted to say," Maya began, adjusting her glasses nervously. "James helps me with my science experiments even when he doesn't understand them. He stays up late reading science books so we can talk about my projects." Layla spoke next. "He learned to play basketball because I love it. He never played before, so he's really bad at it." This brought gentle laughter from the courtroom. "But he tries every day, and he never misses practice now." When it was Zoe's turn, she looked down at the small note card in her hand, then put it in her pocket. Instead of reading her prepared statement, she spoke directly to the judge. "Our mom wanted us to find our dad," she said, her voice clear despite her obvious nerves. "She believed in him even when he didn't know about us. We want to stay with him." Judge Simmons smiled gently. "Thank you, girls. You may return to your seats. The court will take a 15-minute recess while I consider my ruling," Judge Simmons announced, rising from her bench. During the break, James knelt in front of the girls in a quiet corner of the courthouse. "No matter what happens," he said softly, "I want you to know how proud I am of you 3. You were so brave up there." "What if she doesn't let us stay with you?" Maya asked, worry filling her eyes. "Then we'll figure it out together," James promised. "But whatever happens, I'll always be your dad now. Nothing can change that. Change." When court reconvened, Judge Simmons delivered her ruling. "In the matter of custody for Zoe, Maya, and Layla Williams, I have considered testimony from all parties, recommendations from social services, and most importantly, the expressed wishes of the children themselves." She looked directly at James. "Mr. Morgan, while your entry into these children's lives is recent, your commitment appears genuine and substantial. You have demonstrated willingness to prioritize their needs above your business interests." Turning to Andrea, she continued, "Ms. Williams, your love for your nieces is evident, as is your important role in their lives. These girls need connection to their mother's family and the history you share. Therefore, I am granting full legal custody to James Morgan with generous visitation rights for Andrea Williams. This arrangement will be reviewed in 6 months to ensure it continues to serve the children's best interests." Maya squeezed James's hand tightly while Layla bounced in her seat. Zoe remained still, but the tension in her shoulders finally relaxed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the family. Cameras flashed and microphones were thrust toward James. "Mr. Morgan, how do you feel about the judge's decision? Will this affect your role as CEO of Morgan Technologies? Do you regret having to choose between your company and your daughters?" James held up his hand, still bandaged from the previous day's incident. "I don't regret anything," he said clearly. "There was never actually a choice to make. Family comes first. My daughters come first. Everything else, including my company, has to work around that reality." Cameras captured his words as he guided the girls to their waiting car, where Patricia helped them inside away from the media frenzy. 2 days later, James called a board meeting at Morgan Technologies. The tension was palpable as he entered the conference room. Several board members still hadn't forgiven him for missing the Tokyo meeting, despite Marcus's success in closing the deal. "I've asked you here today to discuss the future of this company," James began, "specifically my role in it." Richard Stanton sat up straighter. "Are you resigning?" "No," James replied, "but I am restructuring leadership. I'm creating a new position, co-chief executive officer, and appointing Marcus Washington to share CEO responsibilities with me." Murmurs spread around the table. "This isn't done in major tech companies," Jennifer Hayes objected. "Investors will see it as a sign of weakness." "Or they'll see it as innovative leadership," James countered. "Marcus will handle international expansion and client relations. I'll focus on product development and domestic operations. This structure allows me to be home by 5 o'clock most days while ensuring the company continues to thrive." "And if we object?" Richard asked bluntly. James met his gaze steadily. "Then I'll sell my 45% ownership stake and start a new chapter. I won't miss another talent show or basketball game. My daughters have already lost their mother. They won't lose me to this company." After a long silence, Marcus spoke. "I believe this can work. James and I have run this company together since the beginning. Making it official just acknowledges what's already happening." The board voted 7-2 in favor of the new arrangement. That evening, James gathered the girls in the living room of the mansion. "We need to talk about where we're going to live," he said. "What's wrong with here?" Layla asked, looking around the massive space. "This place was built for a single man who cared too much about impressing other people," James explained. "It's not really a home for children." He opened his laptop to show them photos. "I found a house in Greenwich that I think would work better for us. It's in a neighborhood with other families, closer to school, with a big backyard." The photos showed a large but not ostentatious house with a tree-lined driveway, a swimming pool, and a basketball court. "It has 5 bedrooms, so you each get your own room, plus a study space for Maya, a dance area for Zoe, and a home gym where Layla can practice basketball in winter." "It looks normal," Maya said, sounding surprised. "That's the idea," James nodded. "It's a family home, not a showpiece." "When would we move?" Zoe asked. "If you like it, we could be in by the end of the month." The girls exchanged looks, having one of those silent conversations that triplets seemed capable of. "We like it," they said almost in unison. Later that night, Patricia brought ice cream to celebrate both the custody decision and the house plans. As the girls debated favorite flavors, she showed James her tablet. "Your story has started something," she said. "Look, the screen displayed news articles with headlines like Tech CEO chooses family over fortune and Morgan's choice sparks discussion on work-life balance." One business magazine had published an opinion piece titled, "The Morgan Model, Can Executives Be Good Parents Too?" "You've inspired a national conversation about working parents," Patricia explained, "especially fathers in high-pressure jobs." James watched his daughters laughing together on the couch, ice cream dripping from their spoons. 6 weeks ago, he'd been alone in this massive house with only his company for company. Now his quiet, ordered life had been replaced by noise, mess, and more joy than he'd ever imagined possible. "I'm not trying to be an example," he told Patricia. "I'm just trying to be a dad." "Well," Patricia smiled, "you're doing a pretty good job at both." 6 months passed quickly in the Morgan Williams household. Spring turned to summer, which faded into a crisp New England fall. The family had moved into their new home. A spacious but not extravagant house in a family neighborhood of Greenwich where children rode bikes on sidewalks and neighbors knew each other's names. James stood in the kitchen on a Saturday morning watching a YouTube tutorial on his tablet. "French braids can't be that hard," he muttered to himself, pausing the video to study the hand positions. Layla sat on a stool in front of him, fidgeting impatiently. "Dad, my game starts in an hour." "Hold still," James said, carefully separating her hair into sections. "I almost have it this time." Maya looked up from her cereal, pushing her glasses up her nose. The key is maintaining equal tension on all three strands, while incorporating new hair from the sides. James raised an eyebrow. Since when are you an expert on hair? I read a book about it. Maya shrugged. It's basically applied physics. Zoe entered the kitchen, already dressed for the day. Let me help, she offered, taking over the braiding from James. Thank you. He sighed with relief. 6 months, and I still can't get it right. You're better at the regular braids now, Zoe encouraged, as her fingers worked quickly through Layla's hair. French braids are harder. The new house felt like a real home. Each girl's bedroom reflected her personality. Maya's filled with books and science equipment, Layla's decorated with sports posters and trophies, Zoe's a calm space with music notes painted on one wall and plants on every surface. The backyard featured a garden the girls had planted in memory of their mother. Each had chosen flowers Tasha had loved, and they often sat there talking to her about their day. Patricia arrived carrying folders and coffee. Even on weekends, she helped manage the family's increasingly complex schedule. Layla's basketball game at 11 o'clock, Maya's science club at 1, and Zoe's choir practice at 3, she announced, handing James a coffee. Andrea called. She's coming to the basketball game and staying for dinner. Thanks, Patricia, James said. What would we do without you? Crash and burn, she replied with a smile. Oh, and the PTA wants to know if you're bringing cookies or brownies to next week's fundraiser. Cookies, Zoe answered for him. Dad burned the brownies last time? That was one time, James protested good-naturedly. At Morgan Technologies, the co-CEO arrangement had proven surprisingly effective. Marcus handled international meetings and travel, while James focused on product development and left the office by 5 o'clock most days. The company's stock had actually risen after the restructuring, something the board members who had opposed the change couldn't quite comprehend. Later that morning, the family gathered at Greenwich Youth Center for Layla's basketball game. James sat in the bleachers between Maya and Zoe, cheering whenever Layla touched the ball. Andrea arrived midway through the first quarter, sliding into the seat next to them. Sorry I'm late, she said, giving each girl a quick hug. Traffic from the airport was terrible. How was Detroit? James asked, his relationship with Tasha's sister now comfortably cordial. Cold? Andrea laughed. But good to see family. On the court, Layla's team was down by 4 points. When she stole the ball and made a perfect layup, James jumped to his feet. That's my girl, he shouted, earning an embarrassed smile from Layla and eye rolls from Maya and Zoe. Andrea leaned closer to James. I still can't believe you're the same uptight billionaire from the custody hearing. Neither can I, James admitted. By the fourth quarter, the game was tied. With 10 seconds remaining, Layla's coach called a play for her. She dribbled down the court, faked left, then shot from the three-point line. The ball swished through the net just as the buzzer sounded. The crowd erupted as teammates mobbed Layla. James, Andrea, and the girls rushed down to congratulate her. Did you see that shot? Layla asked excitedly, her face flushed with victory. Amazing! James hugged her, not caring about the sweat. Your mom would be so proud. The mention of Tasha no longer brought immediate sadness. They had learned to include her memory in happy moments, keeping her present in their lives. The following week brought Maya's regional science fair. She had worked for months on a project about renewable energy, building a miniature water wheel that generated enough electricity to power a small lamp. Are you nervous? James asked as they set up her display booth. A little, Maya admitted. There are 15 other projects in my category. You've got this, James assured her. I've seen how hard you've worked. Hours later, when Maya's name was announced as the winner, her shocked expression melted into a huge smile. She accepted the trophy with shaking hands, searching the audience until she found James, Zoe, and Layla cheering wildly. I'd like to thank my dad, Maya said into the microphone during her brief acceptance speech. He helped me build the water wheel housing even though he drilled through his own thumb. James laughed along with the audience. The small scar on his thumb a proud reminder of late nights in the garage working on the project. As middle school approached, new challenges emerged. The girls faced more complex social dynamics, friendship dramas, and the beginnings of interest in boys, all territory that terrified James far more than any business negotiation. One evening, he found Zoe sitting alone on the back porch, looking at her phone with tears in her eyes. "What's wrong?" James asked, sitting beside her. "Allie and Jesse are having a sleepover and didn't invite me," Zoe said quietly. "They posted pictures." James felt that familiar parental helplessness, the inability to fix every hurt. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. That feels terrible." "It's stupid." Zoe wiped her eyes. "I shouldn't care." "It's not stupid to feel hurt when people exclude you," James said. "I still remember being the last kid picked for teams in gym class." "You?" Zoe looked skeptical. "I was skinny, quiet, and terrible at sports," James laughed. "Hard to believe, I know." They sat in comfortable silence until Zoe spoke again. "Dad, do you think I could invite some friends over soon? Maybe we could use the pool and have a cookout." "Absolutely." James nodded. "You can plan it however you want." 2 weeks later, Maya approached James with an unexpected request. "I want to see where you work," she announced at breakfast. "We've never visited Morgan Technologies." "You want to see my office?" James asked, surprised. "We know it's a big part of your life," Maya explained, "and I'm interested in technology careers." "Me too," Layla chimed in, though James suspected she was more interested in missing a day of school. "I'd like to see it as well," Zoe added. The following Friday, James brought all 3 girls to Morgan Technologies headquarters. Employees stared in fascination as the famous triplets toured the building. Many had heard stories about James's daughters but had never seen them in person. In the main engineering lab, Maya asked detailed questions that impressed even the senior developers. Layla charmed everyone with her energy and direct questions. Zoe observed quietly, absorbing everything. "This is where I worked those long hours before you found me," James explained as they entered his office. "It used to be my whole world." "Do you miss it?" Zoe asked perceptively. "Being here all the time?" James considered the question. "I miss the simplicity sometimes. Work problems have solutions. Parenting is messier." "Sorry we complicated your life," Maya said, half joking. "Best complication ever," James assured her, putting his arm around her shoulders. That night, after the girls were asleep, James sat at his desk reviewing Maya's first quarter grades. Straight A's, with a special note from her science teacher about her exceptional aptitude. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Board impressed with Q3 results. Co-CEO model working better than anyone predicted. You were right." James smiled and set down his phone. He picked up a framed photo from his desk, a recent picture of all 4 of them at Layla's basketball championship, faces pressed together, grinning widely. Next to it stood a smaller frame containing a photograph of Tasha that Andrea had given him. In it, Tasha held newborn triplets in the hospital, looking exhausted but radiant. His fingers lightly touched Tasha's image. "We're doing okay," he whispered. "They're amazing, Tasha. I wish you could see them now." As he prepared for bed, James checked each girl's room, a nightly ritual he never skipped. Maya slept surrounded by books, one still open beside her. Layla had somehow managed to kick all her covers onto the floor. Zoe slept peacefully, a notebook on her nightstand filled with lyrics she'd been writing. James carefully fixed Layla's blankets, removed the book from Maya's bed, and turned off Zoe's still-playing music. 6 months ago, he wouldn't have known how to take care of a goldfish, let alone 3 young girls. Now he could identify different types of hairbands, knew everyone's favorite foods, and could navigate parent-teacher conferences with confidence. He'd learned that glitter was impossible to completely remove from carpets, that middle school drama felt like life or death to those experiencing it, and that nothing in his previous life had prepared him for the heart-expanding love of fatherhood. Tomorrow would bring Maya's dentist appointment, Layla's basketball practice, and Zoe's choir concert. It would include homework help, dinner preparation, and probably at least one minor crisis. And James wouldn't trade it for anything. The calendar on the kitchen wall had a date circled in red, October 15th, with birthday, written in 3 different handwritings. 1 year had passed since 3 soaking wet girls appeared on James's doorstep during a thunderstorm. Tomorrow, Zoe, Maya, and Layla would turn 11 years old. James stood in the kitchen early that morning, surrounded by baking supplies. Patricia had agreed to make the birthday cake, but he wanted to contribute something himself. "Are you sure about this?" Patricia asked, watching James measure flour with intense concentration. "How hard can cookies be?" he replied, checking the recipe on his tablet. "I run a technology company. I should be able to follow simple instructions." Patricia smiled knowingly. "I'll be back in 2 hours with the cake. Try not to burn down the kitchen." While James battled with cookie dough, the girls were upstairs wrapping presents for each other, a birthday tradition their mother had started years ago. "Do you think Dad remembered we don't like surprise parties?" Maya asked as she taped colorful paper around a book for Zoe. "He better have," Layla replied. "I told him 3 times." "He remembered," Zoe assured them. "I saw the guest list on his desk. Just family and our close friends like we asked." The previous week, James had offered to host a huge party with entertainment and catering, but the girls had declined. They wanted something smaller and more personal for their first birthday without their mother, but with their father. By afternoon, the house transformed. Marcus arrived with balloons and decorations. Andrea came early with her cousin Denise and Uncle Robert from Detroit, relatives the girls hadn't seen since their mother's funeral. "Look how you've grown!" Uncle Robert exclaimed, hugging each girl in turn. "Your mama would be so proud." "We brought some special things," Andrea said, carrying several boxes. "Home videos your mother saved, photos from when you were babies, family memories." James greeted the Detroit relatives warmly, their initial tensions long resolved. Over the months, Andrea had become not an adversary but a partner in raising the girls, offering insights about Tasha that helped all of them keep her memory alive. As 5 o'clock approached, guests began arriving. Classmates, neighbors, James's assistant Patricia with her husband, even Dr. Kendrick, who had examined the girls on that first stormy night. The house filled with voices and laughter. Maya showed her science club friends the laboratory James had built in the basement. Layla and her basketball teammates played an energetic game in the backyard. Zoe and her choir friends gathered around the piano, filling the house with music. James moved through it all, greeting parents, refilling snacks, taking photos. He paused when he realized what was happening. His house, once a showcase of elegant emptiness, now overflowed with life. Children ran through hallways where business associates once walked cautiously. The formal dining room held pizza boxes instead of catered appetizers. Patricia appeared at his side. "Time for cake," she announced. Everyone gathered in the living room where a large cake waited, decorated with music notes, basketballs, and science symbols, one section dedicated to each girl. 11 candles flickered atop the frosting. James watched his daughters blow out the candles together, their faces illuminated in the brief glow. Someone took a photo, capturing the moment perfectly. "Before we cut the cake," James said, raising his voice slightly, "I want to say something." The room quieted. 1 year ago today, I lived alone in a different house. I thought I knew what success meant. I thought I knew what mattered. He looked at each girl in turn. Then 3 amazing young women showed up on my doorstep and completely changed my life. He cleared his throat. "Your mother, Tasha, gave me the greatest gift I never knew I needed, not just daughters, but the chance to be a father. I wish she could be here today, but I know she's watching and smiling at the incredible people you're becoming." Andrea wiped a tear from her eye as James continued. Zoe, Maya, Layla, you've taught me more in 1 year than I learned in the previous 35. Thank you for your patience while I figured out how to be a dad. I love you more than I could ever express. We love you too, Dad, Maya said, starting a group hug that the other girls quickly joined. After cake, James presented each girl with a special gift. For Maya, a professional-grade microscope with a note about believing in her scientific future. For Layla, custom basketball shoes with her name stitched inside. For Zoe, a leather-bound journal with a fountain pen that had belonged to Tasha. Your mom used this pen to write lyrics and poetry, James explained as Zoe examined it with wonder. Andrea found it among her things. I thought you might like to continue the tradition. Later, when most guests had left, the family gathered in the media room to watch home videos Andrea had brought. On screen, a younger Tasha held 3 identical babies, singing softly as she rocked them. That's her lullaby, Zoe whispered, the one I sang at the talent show. Another video showed the girl's 3rd birthday. 3 little girls in matching dresses blew out candles while Tasha clapped. Look how tiny we were, Layla marveled. You were the loudest, even then, Andrea laughed. Always running, always moving. James watched, transfixed by these glimpses of the life he'd missed, the birthdays, first steps, early words. But instead of sadness, he felt gratitude for now being part of their story. After Andrea and her relatives left for their hotel, James helped the girls start memory boxes, special containers where they could keep keepsakes from their mother alongside new memories they were creating with him. Maya placed her first science fair ribbon next to a small rock Tasha had given her. Layla added her basketball championship medal alongside her mother's old bracelet. Zoe carefully positioned a choir program beside a page of Tasha's handwritten lyrics. These boxes are for both parts of your lives, James explained. To show that loving me doesn't mean forgetting your mom, she'll always be part of who you are. When the girls finally went to bed, exhausted from their big day, James retreated to his study. He carefully placed the new family photo from the party on his desk, right beside the picture of Tasha with the newborn triplets. Thank you for finding a way to bring them to me, he whispered to her image. I promise I'll take care of them. Around midnight, James heard giggles from downstairs. He found the girls in the living room, where they'd built an elaborate fort using blankets, chairs, and sofa cushions. What are you 3 doing up? He asked, crouching to peek inside their creation. Birthday tradition, Maya explained. Mom always let us build a fort and sleep in it on our birthday night. We didn't want to break tradition, Layla added, already snuggled in a sleeping bag. Want to join us? Zoe asked, patting an empty space. We saved room for you. James looked at his watch, thinking about the early meeting he had tomorrow. Then he looked at the 3 hopeful faces watching him. Let me get my pillow, he said. Inside the fort, illuminated by battery-powered lanterns, the girls shared stories about previous birthdays with their mother. James listened, occasionally asking questions, learning more about the woman who had loved these children so completely. Eventually, the girls drifted to sleep, one by one. James remained awake, watching over his daughters in the soft light. Maya's glasses were askew on her face. Layla had somehow managed to take over 2/3 of the available space. Zoe slept with her new journal clutched to her chest. 1 year ago, James Morgan had been defined by his company, his wealth, his success in business. He had built an empire but lived in emptiness, never realizing what was missing from his perfectly ordered life. Now, cramped in a blanket fort with 3 sleeping girls, he understood that his greatest achievement had nothing to do with technology or billions of dollars. His most important creation wasn't Morgan Technologies. It was the family he was building with these 3 extraordinary girls who had taught a solitary billionaire how to become a father. As dawn broke through the living room windows, James finally fell asleep surrounded by his daughters, at peace with the knowledge that no merger, no business deal, no professional achievement would ever compare to the simple joy of being their dad. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen